First off, this camera not only comes with one instruction manual, it comes with two, and they're incredibly large. And you can spend a lot of time going through these things. And how is it possible for me to explain in 5 hours what it might take you over 20 hours to read through in the instruction manual? And it's just not possible. I can't do it. And so we're going to stick to topics that are most important for high image quality. And so there's some fun things that you can do. There's a lot of wireless options. You know, there's this snap bridge technology, and we'll talk a bit about it, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on how to print directly from this camera to a printer or doing slideshows. We're going to really talk about how to get the camera set up for the best image quality. Now, one of the things that I have found is that these instruction manuals are huge. In fact, they got so big, this is, I think, the first Nikon camera. They have split it into two. So you actually have two instruction manuals, which could take up quite a bit of space in your camera bag. And you can download PDF versions of this. And I have this on my computer, which can be very handy for different types of access. And one of the key things I do is I download the PDF, and when I want to look up something, there's a little search bar up on the top. You can just type in that word that you're looking for, like autofocus points, and then it's going to go just to those pages. And so it's a way to scan through those manuals a little bit more quickly. Now, unfortunately, in this class, we don't have time to talk about lighting and composition and all those other things in photography. And if you're wondering why I'm not talking about them, it's because we are dedicated to talking about the Nikon D500 in this class. And so those other things are very important. I do have other classes, and there's other great classes here at Creative Live. I have a 3-hour basics class. I also have a 27-hour highly in-depth class if you really want to get into it. And so those are a couple of classes that you can look at if you want more information about lighting, composition, and all those other things in photography. We're going to be dedicated to this particular camera. So Nikon is nearing its 100th anniversary. So I'm very excited about potential 100th anniversary models that might come out. But they started making cameras very early on in the era of modern photography, you might say. This camera has direct lineage back to 1959, the original F. This still has an F mount on it. Granted, the F mount has evolved over the time, and it is different, and you're not able to take a lens from then and directly put it on here, but ones pretty far back you'll be able to put on. There was a big change in 1986. That's when they introduced autofocus. And so you could take any lens back to 1986 and seamlessly put it on this camera and have it work very, very well. You can use lenses back through the 1970s and have that work very well as well, but those will be manual focus lenses. And in 1999, they brought out their first fully integrated full production model digital SLR camera. I remember this one. It came out, it was $5,500 and had 2.7 megapixels on it. So they've grown quite a bit in the time since then. All right, so what's new and what's great about this camera? Well, we have an incredible autofocus system with 153 autofocus points. We're going to talk a lot about that in this class. Expansive, thorough autofocusing systems any Nikon camera has ever had. Shooting at 10 frames a second, this is going to be a very popular camera for sports and wildlife photographers. It has a 200-shot buffer, which means you can shoot 200 shots in a row just right away. And there's a quick way to get past that real quickly, and there's a reason why it's 200, and we're going to talk about that later in this class. It's the first of the Nikons, it came out at the same time as the D5, that offers 4K video. So there's a number of little implications that come with shooting 4K video. We're going to talk about that. And it's the first of the Nikon cameras to have a snap bridge connection, which is a wireless connection with your smartphone where it will download images automatically and not use a lot of battery power. And so that is something that we'll talk a bit about more as we go through the class as well. All right, so the Nikon system is a great system to be into because they have a full range of cameras, they have a full range of lenses, and they have a complete flash system. So pretty much anything you want to do in the world of photography, there's a good chance that they have a product that is going to help you out in that regard. Now, when it comes to the D500, it is their top-of-the-line crop frame camera. And so they kind of have full frame cameras on the left side of the screen, crop frame cameras on the right side of the screen. And the D500, kind of an unusual name because it should have been called the D400, those of you who know the history of the camera. And so the history of this camera, in my mind, runs all the way back to the F100, the film camera. And then they started making digital versions of their film cameras. And we had the 100, the 200, the 300, then they upgraded the 300S. And then it seemed like time stopped. And we all waited for a D400, which never, ever came out. And there's a huge gap. Look at this. There's a 7-year gap, basically, between the D300S and the D500. Now, I don't work for Nikon. I'm fully independent. I don't even work for Creative Live. I mean, I'm fully independent, and I don't know what Nikon was doing. They should have had a D400 out. I think they were concentrating on their full-frame sensors, and it just one of those products that they kind of passed by for a while. But then they finally decided, you know what? The D300 did really well because that came out with the Nikon D3, and they basically took their professional camera and put it into a small body, took out a few of the key professional features and put it into a small camera size body, and they kind of wanted to match that when they came out with the D5. So you have this D5, D500, very symmetrical, sounds very nice, and so that's kind of why it is where it is. I don't know why they waited this long, and who knows how long it'll be before they have a well, they can't have a D600 because they already have a D600, so who knows where they're going to go next. So I think this is going to be a camera that's going to be sticking around for a while. About the care and handling of the camera, you're going to get a bunch of crazy warnings if you go through the instruction manual. One of my favorite from Nikon is when adjusting the diopter, don't put your finger in your eye. So be very careful of that one, folks. You poke your eye out. And so as far as the durability of the camera, it's pretty obvious. Don't do stupid things with the camera, okay? The big question that a lot of people have is about the weather resistance of the camera. And the camera does have a number of weather sealing seals around any gasket and opening that it might have. However, it says do not immerse or expose to water. Well, exposed to water, that could mean like getting it near a water fountain or, you know, a light mist. And my guess is that the camera is going to do pretty good under a moderate rain for a moderate period of time. You drop a drink of water on it, you're probably okay. If it's juice or something sticky, you're going to have some problems. So you do need to have some reasonable precautions with this. Now, some of the Nikon lenses have better weather resistance than other lenses, and so that's something that you have to be aware of, as well as how well is the entire package weatherized in that sense, because many lenses are not, and so be aware and be careful of that. It has the same weather sealing as the Nikon D810. It is not quite as weather sealed as the D5, if that helps you kind of figure out where it fits into the game, but it's definitely more than, say, a D7200 or a D7000 series. The shutter life of the camera, which is one of the ways we rate how long a camera is expected to last, and just for reference, a lot of the old film cameras were rated at 50,000 firings. This camera is rated at 200,000 firings, okay? So it's expected to last quite some time. Now, some of the pro-end models are, I think, upwards of 400,000 firings, and so there is a range at how long you can expect the shutter to last, and that is one of those things that it's an estimated number. You could go well beyond it. Who knows? The other question a lot of people have is about non-Nikon accessories, because Nikon says that the warranty is voided if you use that. And so there's all sorts of things that you're going to attach, insert, or work with this camera, from lenses, flashes, memory cards, batteries, vertical grips, and various connections on the synchronization of the camera. And so Nikon makes great lenses. I love Nikon lenses, but you know what? I think Sigma and Tamron and Tokina all make lenses that are very good that might fit a certain need and budget, and I really don't see a problem using them. There is a feature or two in the camera that will not work with other brands of lenses. It's a minor issue. We'll talk about it as we get into the menu system. With Nikon batteries, well, there's a whole little issue. And I got to thank Tom, one of our people in our audience today, for alerting me to some information about the batteries. So I went in and I beefed up my information. So I'm going to get you some very clear information about the batteries on this, because there's been some recalls. And I can very easily say, just buck up and spend the extra 20 bucks and get the Nikon batteries. I know there's some cheap ones out there, but I would stick with the Nikon batteries. I would stick with the Nikon flashes if you're going to do an on-camera TTL flash. I think the communication and the operation is much easier with them. I don't think there's a compatibility problem with some of the other cheaper flashes. I just don't think that their cheaper price is worth what you're paying on them. The exception to that rule is if you're going to hook it up to studio equipment. Nikon doesn't really make studio lights, so feel free to hook it up to whatever studio lights you need to get. Nikon vertical grips are really nice. There's some aftermarket ones that are pretty good in value, and they're not going to damage the camera. They just don't have quite as solid of a feel. And so it varies a little bit as to whether I would stick with Nikon or not. It kind of depends on the product itself. So let's make sure our cameras are ready for today. You can go through this checklist with me. I'm going to do it myself. So I charged the battery last night. It takes about 2.5 hours. I got a lens on my camera. You don't need to have 2 memory cards. You just need at least 1 memory card in the camera. I got my camera turned on. Autofocus, there are often switches on the lens. I'm going to make sure mine is in autofocus. And then on the side of the camera is an autofocus manual focus switch. And you want to make sure that's in autofocus. And we'll talk more about these as we get into the class. And we're going to start really simple. I'm going to press down on the mode button, turn the back dial till it gets to program. And then I'm going to press my shutter release, make sure that I can shoot a picture. And I just realized that I had gone in and I had played with the camera as setting up for today's class, and I got to switch something back on so that I can actually focus. There we go. My camera's working. Hopefully yours is as well, and we're ready to get started on the rest of the class.